Welcome everyone to Keeping the Beat, an engaging web series hosted live by TNMEA in partnership with the CMA Foundation. Tune in weeknights, Mondays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays at 8/7 Central to learn from and interact with music professionals from around the globe, representing every facet of this vast musical world. Today is May 28th. My name is Angela Ammerman and I am a mom. Okay, don't leave right now, just assuming I'll talk about motherhood, but it is very exciting. My little one arrived 5 weeks early and my whole entire world shifted in the best possible way. Additionally, I am the founder of Heartstrings International. I am the president-elect of the Virginia String Teachers Association, the hashtag Music Ed Love podcast founder, and the creator of the Future Music Educators Camp. I teach at George Mason University, and previously I was the assistant professor and director of music education at the University of Tennessee at Martin. So I know lots of my Tennessee friends, and it's great to have some people here with us. Tonight, I will be talking to you about Seeing Beyond, Breaking Barriers Through Music at a Thai Children's Home. Before I jump in, I just wanted to say a special thank you to the Hope House Children's Home in Chiang Mai, to Amro Music, to UT Martin, and to all of the individuals who donated to the Hope House project. For those of you that want to go ahead and look into this more already, you can find more information at heartstringsinternational.org. I encourage you to interact by replying to this live video stream with any questions or comments, which we will respond to within the hour. One disclaimer: while this is being streamed live, it will remain on the Keeping the Beat Facebook page for future reference. So as such, your comments will also be part of the archive. Okay, so I'm just going to read a little bit to you from an article that I wrote when I first returned from Thailand. The children didn't speak English and they did not own any instruments, but they did understand a smile, the tilt of your head, the open hand toward the violin case. They knew that I was there to teach songs, and they were captivated by the gift of music. Mayuri, who had witnessed the beheading of her own mother, caught on to playing violin like wildfire. Her passion for music extended far into the wee hours of the night, until she had to be told to pack up over and over and over again. At last, she would say so sweetly in Thai, "Just one more song?" Anurag, who had been living in a makeshift doghouse before coming to Hope House, loved dancing so much that he would break into the biggest smile and immediately run to get his best friend the minute the music started. A few years ago, this was December of 2018, I traveled to the Hope House Children's Home in Thailand to teach songs, dances, and violin to prepare the children for their Cowboy Christmas Festival. Going in with the mindset that I was there to teach them, I had no idea how much they would actually teach me. So let's see. The presentation is called Seeing Beyond, Breaking Barriers Through Music at a Thai Children's Home. Let's start this. น้องเคยเห็นช้างหรือเปล่าเช่นมาตัวโตไม่เบาจมูกยาวๆเรียกว่างวงสองเขี้ยวไต่งวงเรียกว่างามีหูมีตาหางยาว So, okay, this song is just one example of the many things that I learned. This is Chang Chang Chang. It's all about the elephants. And when I first went to Thailand, I'd actually looked up this song and I learned a version that I thought was correct because I didn't know. I don't live in Thailand. And I brought that and I was going to work with the children on this Thai folk song that I thought I knew. And as soon as I started singing it to them, they said, "No, no, 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 no." And they taught me their version, which I just played for you, which is a very different sort of tonality, as I'm sure you could hear just in listening to that. So I want to start just a little bit about talking about the calling. If you're here watching this webinar, you probably have some kind of a calling for music, or else you would not be spending an hour on a Thursday night watching me talk about music and Thailand. But I love what Vincent van Gogh says about his calling. He says, "Your profession is not what brings home your weekly paycheck. Your profession is what you're put here on earth to do, with such passion and such intensity that it becomes spiritual in calling. And many of you watching this, if you're anything like me, you might have gotten chills just listening to that, because teaching music is truly a calling, and living the life of a musician is a calling, and being a lifelong lover of music is something many of us are called to do. And so we can get that same sense of passion that Van Gogh had in all different walks of life with music. My first calling was to teach music. So this picture is a picture of me. I call myself Little Angie when I revert to my child self. This is Little Angie playing violin with my mom and my sister. And you can see that I'm a little bit of a hot mess here. For any string players out there, you might notice right away that my wrist is collapsed, which is horrible. Later in the presentation, you'll actually hear the Thai children say, "Tambo, tambo." And they're referring to an egg that they call tambo. And we talked about putting the egg in the wrist to keep the wrist out. And if you collapse the wrist, then tambo will die and he will ooze through your fingers, drip down your elbow and into your shoes. So if you hear them say tambo, tambo, they don't want you to smash tambo by, collapsing your wrist. So you can see little Angie way back in the day had a collapsed wrist. But I truly believe that I was called to teach music, even as a little girl. And I used to line up all of my doll babies and I would teach them to sing even back then. Obviously, I needed a little bit of help with my posture, but I got there eventually. And this is a few years later when I was teaching at a string camp. This is really important because teaching at the string camp was a key part of my own philosophical development. So growing up, my family didn't have a lot of money. We weren't like poor, but we didn't have a lot of money. And I'll never forget when I went to my teacher and I said, "Oh, I really want private lessons on my violin, but I'm just not sure if my family can afford it." And my teacher said, "Well, why don't you start teaching private lessons to the kids in your neighborhood?" She said, "The kids in your neighborhood, they really, they could use private lessons and you could do it for free or at a really discounted price." And so I did. I started in middle school teaching children to play violin in my own neighborhood, in my own home. Fast forward to high school, where all of my friends were going off to string camp and piano camp and every kind of music camp you could imagine. And I went back to my teacher and I said, "Oh, it's just not fair. I know I'm not going to be able to afford to go to all these different camps. What can I do?" And my teacher said, "Well, you don't actually want to be a performer. You want to be a teacher. So why don't you go ahead and teach at this summer string camp that I know of?" And this is really special to me because I was one of the only high school students at this camp as a counselor. And part of my duties were to run sectionals and to assist one of my great mentors, Laura Jose, in rehearsals. And so as a high school student, I actually got key experiences to really fill that calling and continue to develop my passion, not only for music education and for music, but for actually working with children that maybe didn't have access to the same resources as everyone else, and thinking really creatively about how to serve the students in their needs, not my own. Okay. So in addition to being called to teaching music, I also was called to a position at Annandale High School a few years ago. This is really special because Annandale High School is one of the most diverse schools probably on the planet. I'm maybe exaggerating, but seriously, the students used to joke that I would be the only white person in the entire room. And they really loved that. There was a great pride in our diversity. And you can see from this picture here that we have students from all over the place. We have Korean students, Filipino, Hispanic. We have students from Venezuela, from Vietnam, all over. One of my students was from Egypt, just incredible. And my work at Annandale High School with these students really helped to shape some of my own work with English language learners. And it also helped me realize that I do not have to speak their language and they don't have to speak my language as long as we all speak music. So this is a really, really important part of my own development as I got ready to go to Thailand and work with the children at the Hope House Children's Home. The next place I was called to was UT Martin. So if any of my Martin people are out there, I love you all and miss you greatly. I really firmly believe I was called to come out to UT Martin and teach music, where I learned so much. And I made phenomenal connections that actually led me to being here today with Keeping the Beat. And I was at UT Martin for only 2 years when I felt called to return to Virginia with my husband because, of this little cutie. Okay, sorry. He is only 4 weeks old, and he is in a tuba. That legit happened. And I felt called to become a stay-at-home mom, which is a really, really unique position for me to be in right now. And I'm brand new to it, but I'm truly loving every minute with David. So those are my callings. So a calling is really important, but if you have a calling without a tribe, to me, it's kind of like talent without hard work. And a key part of all of my work with the children's home in Thailand was my tribe. These are all of the people that are going to lift you up and support you in whatever it is that your calling is. And I will tell you, when I decided I wanted to go to Thailand, it was kind of it was one of those moments that I will never forget, actually, because I was at an event with two other string educators. We were judging a big festival. And one of them said, his name was Stevie V. Stevie V said, man, I'm just so sad that I can't go to Thailand and teach violin. And I said, Thailand? And he was like, yeah, I usually go to an orphanage, each summer, and I teach violin. And it's really, a huge part of who I am and what I do. And I just really love it. And I was like, wow, what an incredible thing. And I had always had a passion for working with children who maybe didn't have what everyone else did. So I just hear coming out of my mouth, I'll go to Thailand, without talking to my husband, without making any arrangements. I just said, I'll go to Thailand. So then began the massive preparation of getting ready to go to Thailand and start this strings program. So as I prepared for Thailand, I had to have a number of different things. The first was violins for all of the children. After speaking with Stevie V, I thought for sure that the kids already had violins. Little did I know that I would not only have to procure violins for the children, but I would also have to figure out how to get them from the United States to Thailand, which was insane. So I raised a ton of money. My network, my tribe, just like gathered around me and donated. They donated, I think it was $1,600 within 4 days or something. And with that money and with the help of the Ammerman music company, we went ahead and bought a ton of violins. I think we bought 20. We ended up with 20 between purchasing and donating. And then extra money I purchased from a Thai luthier so that I wouldn't have to bring all the violins with me on the plane. But my tribe really did just kind of gather around and said, this is your vision. This is clearly your calling. Let's make this happen. And so we ended up having enough violins for every single child to play, which was truly remarkable. I had some goals in mind for this. So I wanted to have 2 different groups of classes. I wanted to have violin classes, but I also wanted to teach the children that maybe weren't old enough to play violin just yet. So for the violin classes, we had students in 4th to 8th grade, and all of those students had a translator. This is really important because I noticed the growth of the 2 groups was very similar at first, and then the high school took off. That's not necessarily just because they're older. In fact, being older doesn't really help them advance that much quicker. For those of you that know how we respond to instrumental instruction. Then my 9th to high school students, we did without a translator at all. This is really important to know because my students did not speak English, and most of them did not even speak Thai, to tell you the truth. One of my goals of working with that each violin class was to boost their self-concept through music participation. This was a really, really key part of what I wanted to do. To perform in their annual Cowboy Christmas Carnival and to light a fire for music. My general music classes, I wanted to boost their self-concept through music as well. I wanted to work on Thai folk songs that hopefully they could relate to and that I could also learn and build some socio-emotional connections. And then I wanted to work on Thai and on English. And of course, I wanted to light a fire for them as well. Before going, one important part was getting to know my students. One key thing, as I mentioned before, is that the students had very, very limited English. And again, if I go back to my experiences at Annandale High School, this was something that I actually had dealt with and had dealt with quite nicely. When I was at Annandale, not only did I have a very diverse population, but I had a high population of English language learners. I think it was my second or third year at Annandale High School when the counselors started realizing they could just throw students into my class and I would take them. So they would throw students in randomly throughout the year, and every one of the students that would like just drop into my class ended up being English language learners. Some of them, they barely could say hello, miss to me. So I started a beginning orchestra of almost all English language learners. And the coolest thing about that is that so many of my students that were already in orchestra in advanced groups, they actually ended up signing up for that beginning class as well to help me work with those students. And they would take on a secondary instrument and then they would help with those. So all of my work at Annandale High School really led me to a great position where I could work with English language learners. And I knew really how we could do this without having the same language. They had limited Thai language acquisition. And a big part of this is because so many of the children are from like the tribal regions of Thailand. And in these regions, they speak different tribal dialects. So many of the children, once they arrive at the children's home, they don't actually know Thai. A key component to what the education that is provided at the children's home is to teach them Thai and English so that they can communicate with one another. But as you can imagine, since all of the kids have arrived at the children's home at different times, depending on their life situation, their levels of acquisition were very, very different. And so that was really interesting, especially when I would come to logistical things where I really needed someone to speak English and to translate for me or to have some kind of a consistent language. It was very, very interesting. One fascinating thing that I learned while I was in Thailand is that these children, their personal property is extremely limited. And just to give you an idea, they could only have enough personal belongings that would fit in a box about this size. So like 1 foot by 1 foot box. And when I learned that, I was just blown away and realized how impactful this project could really be for our students, our children at the orphanage. The most remarkable thing is that in spite of these students' horrific backgrounds, many of them, they were all so happy. I was just blown away there's a little girl I'll never forget who her mother abandoned her time after time after time in the woods outside of their tribe. And the chief elder continued to find this little girl in the woods. And finally, he actually went to the children's home and asked them to take her. And in spite of all of this, she is just so happy. And it absolutely blows my mind. So I want to take a look at a moment in the life of someone who doesn't speak the same language as us, just to get you an idea of kind of what the students were kind of dealing with. So I want you to first read this paragraph, and perhaps in the chat, you can go ahead and try to summarize this paragraph. Okay, So this basically, this level of language acquisition would be for a child who has been in a certain culture for 1 to 2 years. So let's say the children in Hope House arrived in 2018. By today, this is all they would understand from what I'm trying to communicate to them, especially if they didn't speak any English or they didn't speak any Thai. They would understand the Nashville in Tennessee is very, there are many in the, and the blah, 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 blah. You understand. They're going to know the city they live in, the state, if they're in, the US. The word free is really important for, especially in the United States, for any English language learners, which there's a direct connection just between what I did in Thailand and what music educators can do with their own students. So you can see some of the words they will understand. After about 3 to 4 years, then we come to this paragraph B. The Nashville blank in Tennessee is very blank. There are many blank in the blank, and the conductor is blank. If you attend a concert, you might hear the blank in the blank and the blank in the horns. There's a free concert at the blank center. You should blank come out for it. So you can already start seeing kind of, this gradual progression of language acquisition. And finally, paragraph C. This is after 7 to 8 years of a child being involved in a new language. So maybe that's the children at the Hope House are now learning Thai, or perhaps it's your English language learners in Tennessee who are now learning English, but they can finally understand. The Nashville Symphony in Tennessee is very beautiful. There are many musicians in the ensemble, and the conductor is exciting. If you attend a concert, you might hear the crunch in the bows and the energy in the horns. There's a free concert Tuesday at the Schermerhorn Center, Symphony Center. Forgive me if I said that wrong. You should definitely come out for it. So I'm going to go to the chat for just a second because we've got some really, really great questions from some of our attendees. Catherine Sam says that there's always something really special about surrounding yourself with the right people. How do you balance self-care and care for your tribe? I find myself giving a lot, but it's also important to take care of yourself. This is so, so hard, and you constantly have to remind yourself that you are important, not just the you that is the professional you, but the you that is the family you, and the you that is the want to go for shopping you, and all of the different versions of you, all of the different passions that you have, they matter. And that's really important to remind yourself. In terms of self-care, I have struggled with that for much of my life, to tell you the truth, and as many of you probably have. And one thing that has definitely helped me slow down a little bit is just is looking at other people who maybe never ever do slow down, and wondering, like, is this all there is? Is there more that I want? And maybe there's not, maybe that's all, but we have to find that balance for ourselves. And sometimes, like, this is really cheesy, but making a pie chart of all of the different things you spend your time on, and what percentage do you spend your time on work, what percentage on family, what percentage on friendships, etc. And that can really be eye-opening to see, does that match with your goals for yourself? Taking care of your tribe, I think we as musicians and educators are really good at that, actually. I think we're really good at helping others and reaching out to others. We're just not as good at doing that to ourselves. And for me, balancing that care for my tribe, it's when people care for you the way that my tribe has cared for me, I find it just mind-boggling, and I constantly want to make sure I'm giving back to them. And really, there's like the cyclical nature of what we do, where somebody gave to us, somebody gave me the gift of music, and the belief in me that I could teach music and be really something special. And so because of that, I constantly feel like I have to give back. And by doing that, I'm honoring those people in my tribe who have lifted me up. But I do agree that it's a big struggle constantly. Jessie Thoman also asks, well, she says, such a beautiful project and calling. What important piece of information could you share with the musicians who would like to start or create a project like this in their own communities? So this is such a great question. And I would say, number one, hone in on someone that needs something, or where is the need in your community or in your life, and first find that. And are you truly called to it, or is it just that you need a project? Because I think there are two different things. For me, I'm constantly taking on new projects, but very rarely do I feel truly called to something. And Thailand was a situation where I was called, there's no question about it. But then to get started in a project like that, my number one thing is jump in. Just jump in and start planning immediately. Let the world know, share this with social media, with your friends, with your families, and get their insights. Start to organize yourself so that you can go out there and teach others, or gather others toward you. I would also recommend that you go ahead and create kind of like a 1-year plan, a 5-year plan, and a 10-year plan for whatever your project is. That will be tremendously helpful. Okay, so I'm going to keep going in the presentation. Thank you for the questions. Please keep them coming if you guys have them. This is a quick video of the students learning a Thai folk song, but in English. This is important because we're working on, at this age, learning each other's names, being kind and loving. And so you'll see one of the Thai teachers helping this young student.
Hello, how are we? English or Thai? English. Okay. When we meet each other, we say hello. When we meet, we say hello. Hello, Tirana. When we meet each other, we say hello. When we meet, we say hello.
Okay, so you can see by this time in our lesson, the students were exhausted. And like, I would say 3/4 of them were not doing the motions anymore. They were like, oh my goodness, but they were still singing. And they were obviously still engaged enough to decide whether or not they wanted to do English or Thai, which is exciting. And then you'll notice that they went up to each other to introduce one another, and practiced saying each other's names and greeting one another, which was really fun. So this was a key part in what I was doing in Thailand, is working with these young children. These kids, their ages are drastically different. They're kindergarten, essentially kindergarten through 4th grade. So you see some really little ones and then some much bigger ones. Oh, sorry. Okay, so one key part in working with students that don't speak English or that don't have a unified language is less talking, which always leads to more growing. And this is a philosophy that I've always held for teaching in general. Less talking equals more growing. The first thing is show me, don't tell me. So as an educator, I'm constantly showing students what to do and what not to do. So I'm going to stop sharing on the screen for a minute so you can kind of see me. So first of all, what not to do on the violin is this. I already talked about this a little bit. So if I'm playing violin like this, I'm going to look at my students and I'm going to say, and then I'll go, because we don't have the same language, you know, but we still can understand and a smile, a thumbs up is really important. And we want to show the students instead of telling them. It takes much longer, even with our English speaking students, to say, okay, go ahead and pull your wrist out, make sure it's nice and flexible. Whereas if you just show them instead, you can just, it's a big difference. Okay, let me go back to my presentation. Okay, the second thing is call and response modeling. This is really, really key, where I say, I just will do one thing and the students have to repeat after me. And so one of the things is that I teach the bow hold. in this manner. Actually, I teach many things. I even will teach how to set up your posture. And so in doing that, with whether they're English speaking or Thai or Spanish or Korean, I'll say 1, 2, and I will show my feet flat on the ground. So 1, 2, and then I'll go, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And after every 2 steps, the students will repeat after me. 5, 6, 7, 8, so on and so forth. I also teach the bow by call and response modeling. And you'll notice that I say swoosh because this is an important part of learning the bow hold.
Practice position. Practice position. Bravo. Katai. No. No. Yeah. Yeah. Katai. Down bow, up bow, down bow, up bow, down bow, up bow, down bow. Su, 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 su. Other way. Su, su, su. Bing bong, bing bong, bing bong, bing bong, bing bong. Practice position. Practice position. Bravo. Turn this way.
Okay, so you can see these students, we all did, if I go back for a minute, they did this call and response, and then the swoosh is the thumb going, let me see if I can show you. The thumb, like a shark fin, is going right here. Swoosh is not at all the right spelling, forgive me for that. And then we do the rest of the bow setup. You may have noticed when I was teaching this, I had to have my bow, like my hand like this so they could see it. That obviously is not proper. Normally your wrist is not up like that, but I needed all the students from where they were standing to really be able to see that. After doing this for just a little bit, not only were the students showing me beautiful bow holds, they were just stunning, but the students knew all the steps because we just used like sound effects, right? So there was no language barrier for that. It was purely they had to repeat what I was saying, which was so fantastic. So real quick, going to some questions. Will Latham, yay, I love all these people on here. Will Latham says, you said you tried to learn Thai well at Hope House. Did the kids pick up English phrases? Did they have a favorite word or phrase they said a lot? Yes, okay, they picked up phrases and I picked up some Thai. And I also learned that like I was doing a lot wrong that I tried to prepare for before I went to Thailand. There was so much I was doing wrong. And when I got there, the coolest thing was that the kids wanted to teach me Thai. They really wanted to share their own language with me and their culture. And that's something that like, if you start those projects like Jesse Thoman was talking about in different communities, one key component is that the members of the community, whether they're children or the elderly or whoever, they want to engage with you. So they want you to be part of their culture as well. They like to share that with you. When I was in Annandale, I had many, many Korean students, and they would joke that I was honorary Korean, and they would bring me chopsticks, like specialty chopsticks. It was so, so cool because they want you to be part of their community and vice versa. We want to share that with one another. So one of their favorite phrases was really sweet, and it probably had to do with my reaction because I'm really ridiculous. But one day, this one student was like really sad and down, and I was like, what's wrong? And I kept looking at her and looking at her, and she looked down at her violin and she showed me, and it was out of tune. And so I went to go ahead and tune the violin, and I was like, no big deal, smile, thumbs up, yay. And I gave her back the violin and she looked at me, she's, I love violin. And I like lost it. I was ready to cry because obviously she knew enough English to know I love. And then to add violin on there, and I was just like, oh, verklempt, you know? And so then after that, it was like a big thing. They would say, I love violin. And that was a big phrase that they kept saying to me. And it meant a lot to me. Georgia Emmons asked, what was your experience adapting to and interacting with the community with having that language barrier as well as the cultural differences? The most amazing thing to me is that like the language barrier, if you try to speak the language of the people or the children, you know, wherever you're going, they really appreciate that. There's no question about it. And by learning some of their traditional folk songs, even though I didn't learn them correctly, like they were not the same version that these children had grown up with, they were so proud to teach me part of their culture. And so by me like preparing to work with them, they were really grateful for that, I think. And I was grateful for them their willingness to show me part of their culture. Adapting to different cultural differences was challenging at times. Definitely like the food was very different. They tried to get me to eat a scorpion and I was like, what is it? What is it? And there's this big language barrier. And so they kept going ding, 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 ding. And then they go ding, 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 ding. And I didn't know what it was. And I asked the director of the children's home, who obviously speaks English. She and I worked together. And she said, oh, that's a scorpion. And I didn't eat it, which was great. But it was definitely different. And there was a lot I had to adapt to. Also like time. And this isn't necessarily a Thai culture thing, but like at the children's home, they're just very flexible on timing. And so I remember the very first day that I was there getting ready for the lessons, I hadn't even blow dried my hair yet because there was a half an hour before the kids were supposed to arrive. And here they were, there was this huge truck and out pour these kids from this truck. And they're so excited and they're running around where we were supposed to meet for this lesson. And I was like, I guess it's time for me to teach. So I went out with my hair still wet, no makeup. And I was like, okay, time to teach, let's do it. And then there were other days where they were like really late, but it turned out that they were really excited for violin. And so they were super early, which is kind of cool. But definitely some adaptation that I had to figure out myself, which was exciting. And yeah, okay, let me go. Okay, so this is a series of nonverbal cues that I've developed from my work with different students in different places. One is unpack, and these are just, you say one specific phrase each time it's time to unpack. And so that way the students get to know the phrase. I've also found, especially in Thailand, that sound effects are so important and powerful. So even if you don't want to use actual terminology, you could just use sound effects and the students really get it, which is cool. But unpack, we act like we're unzipping an imaginary case. And then for violin, viola, we have to open that case. We unzip and we open. And so we unzip, open, and we just say unpack, and they understand what that is. Get books out is really easy. Books. So books, if you have like method books. Instruments up is simply conducting 101-ish. Instruments up. So palms move outward, then up, and instruments up. Rest position is exactly the opposite. We're like ready to play. I'm inviting you and I'm like, nope, stop. And I just say rest position. Measure is one of my favorites because measure, this was tricky at first to me. And then I was like, oh, a measure is just 2 bar lines. So I'd say measure 4, measure 1, so on and so forth. And my students from all different cultures these have made complete sense to them, which is great. Repeat is just repeat. So clockwise, circular motion, repeat. And with the word repeat. One instrument alone, this is in, orchestra, band, choir settings, we will sometimes just want to hear the tenors or just the flutes or whatever the case is. So I will point to the specific section, hopefully they're all together, and I will say violins only. Eye contact is so key when working with children from different cultures. So think about direct eye contact, very clear gestures with what you're doing. And then pack up is hands out, palms facing in, pack up, and then you clap. And I have like a really cute, really quick story. I had this student, he was, I believe, from Venezuela. In my orchestra, he was a cellist, brand new, did not speak hardly any English, but he was getting more and more tired. And this one day we were playing and he acted like he was about to fall asleep on the cello. And I kept saying, wake up, wake up, wake up. And then he looked at me and he did the motion. He got his hands ready and he goes, pack up. And he had the biggest smile on his face. And I was like, oh, he was just joking. Like he totally just made a joke. And when the students start teasing you and they make a joke with you, that's how you know they like you. That's how you know you're reaching them, which is really awesome. So for those of you that are working with English language learners, or perhaps you've decided you want to go to another country to work with different children, the minute that they start teasing you, you've made a good connection. And you can joke around with kids and without any language, without having any consistent language between you. Okay, so this is really cool. This video, oh, sorry. This video is one of the older students decided she wanted to teach the younger students how to play. Oh. This is my favorite part. This is so cute. So she reminds them, you have to bow afterwards, in Thai, not in English. But I just love that this student in my high school group, she wanted to take on these younger student musicians and she wanted to teach them a song herself. So what's really cool, that cycle that I was talking about earlier, where we find something we're called to do. This particular student, she's taller in the back. She clearly felt called to work with these younger musicians. And so she took it upon herself completely to teach them, to work with them. And then she did so much so completely. When I came in, they wanted to show me like a mini performance themselves, which was so cool. And so they did the bow at the end and everything, which was really special. So another special thing that I did while I was there was actually a study on self-concept and music participation. I had this whole series of questions that I modified from another researcher's self-concept survey. And I asked them questions about their friendships, questions about themselves, questions about their emotional stability, all of these different questions to try to figure out what impact does music participation have on them. And when we first gave the survey, it was at the very beginning, before I even started anything, with translators. And then the students would help each other translate for different tribal dialects, which was kind of cool to see also. And so they took the test at the beginning before I taught them anything. And then they also took the same exact test at the end to see, did their feelings about how they fit in with their friends, did those feelings change? Did their feelings about staying awake in classes change? And emotional well-being, all of those things. What we found was incredible. First of all, overall, just their self-concept in general increased in a statistically significant way, which was amazing. There was an increase in student friendships. This was so special. And those of you that have been in bands and orchestras and choirs and guitar ensembles, you know that, man, you play along with somebody for just a few days and you immediately have more friends than you started with. And there was an increase in emotional stability. When I asked the students, with a translator, of course, but what happened to you in this time when you started, when you joined this strings program? Like, what did you notice differently? One of the things they kept saying over and over and over again was, I'm so happy. And over again, I'm just so happy. Another thing that they said, which I found fascinating, was that they weren't falling asleep in their classes anymore. And I thought that was really interesting. That's something I'd love to explore a little bit more. And that was not, the academic self-concept was not statistically significant. However, many of the students did report that they noticed an improvement in their performance in their other classes, which was really neat. And as we know, in the United States, we see that all the time when students join an ensemble. Their grades begin to go up, or perhaps they were already up and they stay nice and high, which was really exciting. But it was cool to see this, all of these changes in the students. So let's see. Jessie asks, are there any resources where one could find more information like this, to the hand signals and the phrases? Okay, that's a great question. And I am actually working on a book on working with English language learners. And I know there are other resources, so forgive me for not knowing where these are available. But I will see if I can find some and then just add them to the chat after the webinar is over. Because for me, I learned mostly by just doing it. I was learning on the job. There's also lots of resources on, I know, for like TESOL. So if you ever look up TESOL, they've got a ton of resources for teaching students from other languages. And so they've got some resources, but I wish I could tell you more than that. I just know that I kind of developed them. I also, well, my own set, I should say. I also have a chapter in rehearsing the middle school orchestra, where anyone can find that chart, as well as some other really great tips on rehearsing middle school students, but also just rehearsal tips in general that I found work well with all children. Okay, so this is a piece of music I wanted to share with you all. This is the students at the Hope House after only, I think this was probably after about a week of instruction. What's really remarkable is that I only saw the students for about 40 minutes a day for 1 week. In most elementary string programs, the first year, the kids don't have a concert, or if they do, they wait until the very, very end of the year. So they've had class after class after class after class. One thing that I firmly believe is if we teach children by rote, they can absolutely perform at a concert within just a few months, honestly, if not like a week, as you're shown here. These students were preparing for the Cowboy Christmas Carnival, which is so fun. It was a big fundraiser that the orphanage puts on. Every single child helped with that carnival. These students were running different booths. They were taking tickets. They were preparing cotton candy. And then at certain times, they were required to drop what they were doing, run to the stage, get their violins, and get ready to perform. And this is one of the pieces that they were performing. And make sure you listen to the very end, because it's really cute.
You ready? Yep.
Notice tombeau. If you heard me say tombeau, that's us talking about that egg. I love it. How can you not adore these children? Okay, so one thing is that after that one young lady said to me that day, I love violin, it became a catchphrase, so that we had to record it for me to have forever. And yeah, it was really neat. But also notice how beautiful their posture was after such a short period of time playing the violin, and how uniformed they were in all of their motions. That's without we had very minimal translation, I should say, with that group, very, very minimal. And almost all the translating was just for little logistical things, and for the teachers to kind of sometimes put some of the students in their place for behavior, to tell you the truth. But it was really great. Okay, so let's see, keeping the beat. The positive impact exposure to music education has on these students is so clear. There are lots of concerns about how music ed will be structured in the upcoming school year during a time when the social emotional learning of our students is so important. What are some ways we as educators can show our students, our admin, and our communities how music education fosters student self-concept and confidence? This is such a great question. I think I'll say for students and communities, they respond really well to videos, images, social media posts. It's why the Arts Can is so powerful. And if you haven't heard of the Arts Can, Weekly Arts Can, it's an advocacy organization that has worked really hard getting students in Weakley County into more music programs. Actually, not getting them into them, excuse me, providing more music and art programs for the children in the community, as well as dance programs. And one of the big ways that we went ahead and demonstrated to the students in the community, especially, how powerful the arts are, was by making a video of different prominent community members, children in the schools, and different supporters of the arts talking about the power of music. My favorite moment of that video, I'll never forget this one student. I said, he was a middle school student, and I asked him, why is band so important to you? What is it about band? And he said, well, in band, I feel like I can matter. Yeah, in band, I matter. I matter. And just the fact that I matter, I will never forget that kid saying that, because the underlying message there is that I don't matter elsewhere. And so that is such a clear and powerful demonstration of how music education does foster student self-concept, confidence. It gives kids a place in school. For our administrators, they speak a very different language than we do. They're very much, many of them, not all, but many of our administrators are very much about data. They're about the money, and they're about their supporters. So the parents and the voters in the community. So it's absolutely key to get them on board with you in a very vocal way. That may be through the newspaper, that may be through school board meetings, that may be through a full out phone campaign where you're just like calling every single day to advocate for your arts programs. But I feel like, unfortunately, after COVID-19, many of us are going to have to almost start over in our advocacy efforts, in that the arts are essential to a child's well-rounded education. And we have to constantly be reminding people of that. Jesse asks if I think the info that we're using in Thailand can be translated into underserved, poverty-stricken communities. And absolutely, 100% yes. In fact, when I was working with Thailand, I mean, so many of these children, they sometimes they don't know their parents. Sometimes, oh, this is just heartbreaking, but their parents literally threw them into the orphanage truck. This is really crazy and mind-blowing, but this truck comes through each of these tribal regions from time to time to pick up children that are going to go to the children's home. And one of the kids, the truck came through the village, and the director of the orphanage had no idea this child was going to be coming to them. The father saw the truck and came running up and just threw the kid in. That's it. It blows my mind. And in spite of that, these kids are so happy and grateful for what they have, their personal belongings in that 1 foot by 1 foot box, and the friendship and family that they have through the orphanage. It's remarkable. But absolutely, so much of what I did in Thailand could very much be translated to underserved, poverty-stricken communities. And it's a great passion of mine to continue working with kids in different communities, whether it's orphanages or refugee camps, or here in the United States, we have so many groups of kids that need music education or arts education in general. And what we did in terms of boosting children's self-esteem and self-concept, we can absolutely do all over the world. Okay, quickly, Lizzie Evans says, there are so many aspects of this that translate perfectly to working with children with disabilities as well. Less talking, more doing. Hand motions, singing actions for memorization, all so good. Ah, Lizzie, you're speaking my language. This is exactly right. In fact, it's so funny. I cheat a little bit, I'm not gonna lie, when I do different presentations, because sometimes I've worked with special needs, some special needs communities in some of my presentations, and I have stolen my slides from my English language learner work because they truly work so well together. Liz Alexander asks, how did teaching in Thailand change your teaching approach in the US? Okay, so I'm already really animated. For if anybody doesn't know me, I can't ever get a good picture because I'm always like moving constantly. But in Thailand, I realized the importance of my facial features and the importance of a smile, the importance of eye contact. I actually ended up exaggerating that even more when I was there. And now I'm finding with everyone wearing a mask everywhere, my eyes are everything. And so when I go out and about, I'm speaking with my eyes, and I'm very aware of the message I'm trying to convey with my eye contact, which is remarkable. I also am constantly trying to talk less when I'm teaching and show more. And I'm getting my students to do the same thing. So and I'm so much more grateful for what I have after being in Thailand. I just never realized how blessed I was in this country and in the different things that I have. So these are the students in Thailand. This is a big group of us after their cowboy Christmas carnival. And this look is this totally reminds me of how they were. And I'll tell you, at the end of my time there, over 30 orphans now can play the violin. On my very last day in Thailand, as I was leaving, a bunch of kids came running up with violins, and they like with the violins in their cases, as if I'd forgotten some of my luggage. And I said, no, they are yours. You keep them. Understanding gradually came over their faces, and one by one, they were flooded with relief and then joy. And then at last, we all came together in this huge, huge hug. I have to tell you that there is something so magical about playing a musical instrument. All of a sudden, the world bursts with color, confidence soars, and the impossible seems within reach. This time in Thailand was truly magical for the children and for me. One of the teachers at the children's home said to me, "Our children never dreamt of playing the violin. They have always believed that this was an instrument for the wealthy, the privileged. Thank you for helping our children see beyond." And that message that she said to me has been so powerful, and it has really encouraged me to go ahead and start an organization called Heartstrings International. And this organization, we're working on getting more organized, first of all, to have a more stable string program at Hope House. This is my first thing, is that I want to make sure the children at Hope House actually have a building for the instruments and a building to rehearse in. Right now, the instruments are being stored in a tree house. And this is what they can do. And I want to say very proudly that the orphanage strongly supports arts education. They are amazing in what they do. But an orphanage is necessarily an organization that can only afford the necessities, right? And so building a music building is just not a necessity at the moment for them. But if you would like to donate, you can donate at heartstringsinternational.org. And all of that money will go toward building a music building eventually for these kids to house the instruments. I also would love to get a rotation of string teachers out to the orphanage to continue working with them. We just had a UT Martin graduate, Michaela Johnson, who went out and worked with them for months, 2 months, almost 3 months, but but because of the coronavirus, she actually had to return early, but she did an amazing job out there. And if anybody is interested in going to Thailand and working with these children, please reach out to me and let me know, and I'll see if I can set it up, because my vision eventually is to have a full rotation so that the children constantly have access to a certified music educator, or someone who's close to being certified as a music educator, and that we can continue to help these children see beyond. I thank you so much for having me out today. I have a quick message from Keeping Up the Beat. Tune in on weeknights, Mondays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays at 8/7 Central to keep watching Keeping the Beat live. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and don't forget to like and share. And let me see. Oh, sorry. I was going to go through this stuff, but I'm going to go. Oh, yes. Okay, the calling. Just remember, your profession is not what brings home your weekly paycheck. Your profession is what you're put here on earth to do, with such passion and such intensity that it becomes spiritual in calling. And I hope that you can make everyone in your life as happy as all of my the students in Thailand have made me. Thank you. Yay. Thanks, everybody.